Good evening and welcome to the Somerville Redevelopment Authority meeting of May 6, 2026. My name is Phil Ercolini. I'm chair of the Somerville Redevelopment Authority, and I call this meeting to order at 5:33 p.m. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this public meeting of the SRA is being conducted via remote participation, and this session will be recorded and will be a public record. I will now ask the board members to confirm they are in attendance in an alphabetical order. Courtney Brunson,
Here.
William Gage. I know he's here, but I didn't hear his voice. Okay, Patrick McCormick,
Here.
Christine Stone,
Here.
Ben Wheeler,
Here.
and myself, Phil Ercolini. We do have a quorum. I'll now ask city staff to present a few of the house rules about using the technology.
Hello, everyone. My name is Katie Weiss, and I am an economic development planner at the city and serve as staff to the Somerville Redevelopment Authority, or SRA. When an agenda item is being presented, any presentation materials that staff have received ahead of time will be displayed on the screen. If participants wish to direct the board's attention to a specific page, they should verbally note which page staff should show on the screen and should verbally explain to the board what is being shown. Please also note that this meeting is being conducted remotely using Zoom webinar. In order to comply with the state's open meeting law, which does not allow for side conversation, the chat function amongst attendees has been disabled. If you as an attendee have a question or would like to make a comment on the matters discussed tonight, please use the raise hand function to indicate that you would like to speak. I will unmute participants one by one and give you 2 minutes to speak. When it is your turn, please clearly state your name and address before saying anything else. After 2 minutes, your microphone will be muted. Please remember that any questions asked by attendees this evening will be part of the open record. I will now pass things to the SRA Special Counsel, Kathy Selkert.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kathy Selkert. I'm special counsel to the SRA. I just want to advise all SRA members that all votes taken must be roll call votes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathy, and welcome everyone. We'll go right to the agenda, which this evening, item number 1 is approval of the minutes of the April 1st, 2026 general meeting. And have all members had an opportunity to review the minutes?
Yep.
Any comments or edits to that? I'm seeing none. If that's the case, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Courtney Brunson makes a motion to approve. Is there a second? Christine Stone seconds. We'll do roll call vote. Courtney Brunson,
Yay.
William Gage,
Yes.
Patrick McCormick. I don't hear Patrick's
Sorry.
voice.
Yes.
Okay, yes. And Christine Stone,
Yes.
Ben Wheeler,
Yes.
and myself, Phil Ercolini, have approved the minutes of the April 1st, 2026 general meeting. Next item on the agenda is a public comment period. Any members of the public, Ben or Katie out there who would like to address the SRA at this point in time?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are 3 members of the public on the webinar right now. So if anyone would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand function and I will call on you. We'll give it a minute or so to allow you to raise your hand. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any hands raised.
All right, Katie, if the public at some point during the agenda items they want to address the SRA, they may do so. The next item on the agenda is item number 3 is the annual presentation from Groundwork Somerville regarding their use of SRA owned land at 100 and 138 South Street. And Ben or Katie, the members from Groundwork here want to do a presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have M. Plotkin and Leah from Groundwork Somerville to present on their program. So
Great.
I'll hand it over to you.
Great. So we have a slideshow. Should we present that like from our side?
If you're able to, yeah. I also have it if it's not accessible.
Oops. I think we should be able to. Sorry, we're just getting it together.
Could you just identify yourselves just so that we know who's who?
For sure.
do.
Yes.
Will do.
My name is M Plotkin. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm one of the three co-directors, and I take a lead on our youth program. So our youth employment, Green Team, which we'll talk about more.
Great.
And my name's Leah. I use they or she pronouns, and I am one of our other co-directors. I take a lead on our urban agriculture programming. And then our third co-director, who is not here, is her name is Kenzie, and she takes a lead on our climate resilience work.
Great.
All of which we will be getting more into in our presentation.
Great. Okay. So
Yeah.
you may proceed.
Yeah.
Okay. And here we go.
Awesome. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Great. Well, thank you guys so much for having us again this year. It's nice to do our annual check-in. As was mentioned, we work with Groundwork Somerville, a local nonprofit whose mission has been changing places, changing lives, and changing systems since 2000. We're going to be going over a little bit about our programming from 2025, as well as how 2026 has been going, and moving into the future, what our visions for our organization are. All right. So, for those of you who don't know, Groundwork Somerville is actually one affiliate of a national organization, which is Groundwork USA. Groundwork USA as a network engages communities to improve environmental, economic, and social conditions, increase the likelihood of upward mobility, and improve health and overall quality of life. So each affiliate is their own separate independent 501c3 nonprofit, but we do have this national network, which focuses on, like, we all have the same goals, but broadly, but we all sort of use different methods to meet those goals, which are locally based, place-based solutions. So here in Groundwork Somerville, we run our urban farm program as well as do a lot of work with youth employees and climate resilience work. So today with the SRA, we're going to be talking largely about also our urban agriculture programs, because that is the land that we use with you guys. So a little bit about our organization. At the end of 2023, no, end of 2024, yeah, a year and a half ago, we restructured into a collaborative leadership model. So we have three co-directors, all of whom have equal power and different sort of focuses in terms of how we help the organization function. So as I mentioned, my name's Leah. I am our urban agriculture lead, which basically means that everything that happens at South Street Farm and any other sort of green spaces that we help steward or help support, I try to make sure that our programming is running smoothly, it's bringing people in, we're producing food, and all of the systems that we need to make that happen are in place and functional. Our third coworker who is not with us here today, Kenzie Ballard, is the climate resilience lead. So she manages community partnerships, a lot of outreach. She also heads up our urban forestry initiative, and also leads a lot of resident action through our Climate Safe Neighborhoods program.
And then, like I said, my name's Em. I am our youth programs lead, so I'm managing our youth workforce, doing everything from the recruiting, the hiring, to shaping the lessons and the schedule and how we're getting from place to place with our youth and hiring the leaders who are working with them. Which also brings me to the part-time and seasonal workers that come on with us. During the growing season, our staff balloons a little bit. We have right now another green team leader and a farm manager and educator, both of whom support in day-to-day operations and programming with our youth. And then in the summer, we'll add on another small handful of green team leaders because we'll be serving more youth. So, but this is the year-round team.
Yeah. So, our urban agriculture and food justice programs. Speaking of 138 South Street. So, South Street Farm, as you are all probably aware, is Somerville's only urban farm. And we do a lot of things on it. We host weekly volunteer hours, which are actually going to be starting up next week, every Wednesday from 5 to 7 p.m. It is a really important site for our green team projects. We have youth that are there with us 6 weeks during the summer, but we also have spring and fall programming, which Em will get more into. We also do a lot of community work days where we just host people on like a Saturday or Sunday to do various projects around the farm. We produce over 2,000 pounds of organic produce every season, all of which gets donated for free, either through the Somerville Mobile Farmers Market, our local Union Square Community Fridge, directly to youth and volunteers. And we've worked a lot with the Somerville Project Soup in the past, which we're also hoping to sort of reinvigorate that relationship as well. Beyond growing food, we also have multiple pollinator gardens. We grow a lot of flowers, and we work with a lot of organizations around Somerville, such as Green and Open Somerville, to create more spaces for pollinators to thrive in Somerville's dense urban environment. Beyond just the actual farm work that happens and the volunteering and education around agriculture that South Street Farm supports, it also supports a lot of events and celebrations. This past summer, we opened up a concert series where we had 3 separate shows with, I think, over 10 local performers, all of whom raised money for various local causes that they cared about. We have had a lot of really fun community celebrations. The highlight of those was Harvest Festival, actually, this past year, where we had over 300 people visit the farm and used our produce that we had been growing all season in a bunch of different workshops on things like fermentation. Let's see what else, like fermentation, hot sauce making.
We made like balms and salves out of like essential oils that we had distilled from medicinal plants that we grew on the farm.
Yeah, there was live music. There were, I think, at least 15 community tables from other local organizations. So yeah, the farm has become a really wonderful place, not only for growing food and doing education around urban agriculture, but also being a community third space that people can use and feel comfortable in, and come together to celebrate and gather all of the cool stuff that we can do in urban environments. Another really exciting program that we piloted last year using the land at 100 South Street was a community garden with the Somerville Office of Immigrant Affairs. So we realized that our land at 100 South Street could be better put to use. It was a lot of land for just our small team to take care of, and there was a big need in the community for more community garden space. So we worked really closely with the Somerville Office of Immigrant Affairs to open up 13 new gardener beds to immigrant families. And it's been really incredible to see how that program has blossomed. We have a lot of families now who garden with us at 100 South Street who are able to grow their own food and contribute to their family's food security through being able to do so. And it's also been really incredible to see how access to this kind of space and access to this kind of language accessible programming has really helped a lot of people who often don't speak English and are linguistically isolated feel more connected to community, as well as have a safe space outdoors where they can go and feel comfortable and interact with nature while also interacting with their own culture and like foods that they have grown up that maybe are hard to access now that they live in Massachusetts. So that's been a really cool program that we started in May of last year. These are photos from our opening celebration where the mayor came and did a little ribbon cutting ceremony with us. And yeah, so that is another cool thing that we've been able to use the land at 100 South Street to be able to do.
Which moves us into Green Team. Again, this is our youth workforce that really makes all of our work possible. And then we, in turn, are doing our best to provide a safe educational space to help youth develop their leadership skills, their confidence, their like professionalism. A lot of youth, it's their first job. So we get to set really clear standards of like what is expected of them and have those guardrails for them to bump up against, but in a safe place where they're with people who are used to working with youth. And it's not some like job at CVS or something where their boss is not like looking out for their best interest necessarily. This is a photo from us at Yellowstone National Park last year, where we went as a part of our partnership with Groundwork USA So a little ways away from 138 South Street, but the green team can go far and wide. So our spring green team has been running strong for several years. Last spring, we took on a variety of projects, our youth ended up putting together a whole presentation about bike access and safety in our streets and presenting that at the Youth Bike Summit in Roxbury. This spring, we've been hard at work starting seedlings for the farm, transplanting things, and then there's also a few photos here from our new spring break program, which is also something that we piloted last year, where we took a unique group of 8 different students from our spring green team and had them just for a week. And it was kind of like summer camp, if summer camp was a job, but it was a lot of fun. Last year, we spent our time mostly on the farm doing some of those larger projects that take like more hours than we have in just the after school slot with our regular spring kids. This spring, we focused a bit more on our urban forestry projects. So you can see here, this is our kids jumping with one of the 23 trees that we planted over the course of 2 days. Here is a peach tree that we planted in the community garden at East Somerville Community School. So again, some of our sites beyond the farm, but the farm also providing like a really important home base for the green team to come back to get to not only steward, but like understand that they take ownership over it. High schoolers in Somerville are constantly moving through spaces that were not built for them and are always clearly communicated that it's not for them. You are a guest in this space, you have to be careful. The youth have been kept out of their own high school after school hours end because of like behavior management issues that the school was running up against. So there's not many places that are for them, and getting to use the farm as a space where the kids can come and they can try things and they can mess up and they are not ruining anything. This space is for them. It's for us. It's for the community. And that's a really special thing, and especially for kids who have maybe been kind of divorced from the food system and don't understand it fully, then get to plant a seed, watch it grow, transplant it into like the rows, and then later that season, that's food. And so it's a really special and unique place that we get to create for our kids. And that, again, they make our work possible by doing all that hands-on work, but then they get to reap the benefits of that as well. A couple images from last summer. You can see this is our part of our team giving away some of our produce for free at the Somerville Mobile Farmers Market, where they got to meet some of the folks who are taking their food home. We have them for more hours of the day, so there's a lot more going on. Last year, we started breaking the youth into 2 cohorts so that we have one cohort of youth that's focused on the farm all summer long. So they get to become really familiar with the processes, with what's growing there, what they have to do. So in the beginning, there's a lot of teaching, and then it can just be like, okay, we're going to harvest today. Like, you know what we need, and we can go start that process. So again, getting to see them take ownership over the land, over the processes, over the food that we're producing is really exciting. And then moving into our absent coworkers' role of climate resilience. Our climate resilience work is mostly captured by 2 main programs, our urban forestry work and our climate safe neighborhoods work. The rotating map on the right is showing like different kinds of layers of climate data that show how East Somerville, which is historically redlined, is disproportionately impacted by the effects of climate change. There's low tree canopy, there's higher heat, there's a higher level of impervious surfaces, concrete, asphalt, things that water can't penetrate through. And so our work through urban forestry and community education, community outreach, a lot of which is with our youth and a lot of which is through events that we're hosting on the farm. That's what that's aiming to create awareness around. So like I said, climate safe neighborhoods, this is our program where we start with the education piece because people can't advocate for themselves if they don't know what's going on or how we got there. So building that knowledge and understanding of what is redlining, how did we get here, These neighborhoods didn't just happen, they were created this way. So here you can see this is from our green team doing some tabling outreach at the Harvest Festival with a map asking people, what do they want to see more of in their city? Where do you want to see trees? Where do you notice flooding happen when there's a storm? So doing some of that community and soliciting some community input so we can better advocate for the community's needs when we're talking with city officials. And here's one of those examples. This is our youth presenting their design feedback to the mobility division with the city of Somerville after a 4-part workshop series with Kate White and some of the other folks at the mobility division to give a youth perspective on some of the street redesigns that they're working on currently. There's also some community science stuff, tracking the change over time of like how planting trees can change the climate, literally, of our space. How hot is it? What's the air quality like? And engaging people hands-on in a way that it's not just an amorphous thing. We can see numbers and we can track them over time as these trees grow, as these pollinator plants grow, as we see more insects and birds and animals coming around. And again, CSN is one of these programs that is active across the Groundwork network. So all over the country, CSN is happening in different ways that make the most sense for the cities where they are located. And then lastly, for our urban forestry work, this April we planted 31 trees. Like I said, 23 of those trees were planted by our youth, and then we had 30 volunteers come out to plant the rest of them at our Earth Day event at the Mystic Apartments. And yeah, it's been a great success. It's our first time planting trees, so it's been a fun adventure. We'll be maintaining all of these trees as well as the remaining 22 that we plant in the fall. And we'll also be taking on maintenance of some of the trees around South Street Farm, 138, 198, and 100. Just making sure everyone's doing all good. We're learning about pruning and all the other stuff that happens to maintain trees. Again, all new, but we're excited to be taking on that project for the next couple of years as well.
And yeah, I mean, obviously we're going to leave some time for questions after this, but we just wanted to share with you a little bit about how this last year has gone and our vision for moving forward. So yeah, with it being a year and a half into our co-directorship, things have been great. We have really stabilized the organization, a lot of which has been a lot of work done to build our relationships with various other community organizations, making sure that we're not trying to overlap and rather we're strengthening the programs that are happening all around Somerville. We think that we have a really unique place within the ecosystem of Somerville like community organizations by having this space of 138 South Street being the only urban farm in the densest city in New England. So it's awesome when we can use this space to also support the work that other people are doing. And we're hoping that as we continue to move forward with this collaborative leadership approach, we can continue to deepen the sort of cross-organizational relationships, both between our own prep programs and between our organization and other organizations that are doing similar work around the city. So yeah, we're hoping to, be able to grow some more food on the farm. We spent a lot of time fixing up our greenhouse last year, so we're able to start our own seedlings, which is really exciting. We're hoping to have more community events. We've worked really hard to get our volunteer systems more up to date. So we started a volunteer WhatsApp group, and now we have, like over 200 to 300 people that are consistently, we're consistently in communication with around volunteer opportunities. So we're excited to see how all of the work that we've done to create the infrastructure to be able to grow these programs and really see them flourish comes to fruition over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
Just if any of y'all want to come by and see for yourself how it's going, again, open volunteer hours will be every Wednesday from 5 to 7 p.m. from now through Halloween, Harvest Festival.
Harvest Festival.
Now till the beginning of October. But yeah, I think that's all we have on our end, but happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
I just want to start off by saying thank you both, and how fortunate we are in Somerville to have an organization of this type. It's been very successful over the years. I have really just two questions, and one I think was a follow-up to last year.
Mm.
I'll ask the first question. What is your primary source of funding these days?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of different sources, and to be completely transparent with you, it's a tough funding landscape. It was a really tough funding landscape for the three of us to take on an organization during, after coming back from a 2-month furlough.
Yeah, this administration is making a lot of things difficult across um, the whole, everyone who's doing environmental justice work, across the groundwork network as well.
I'm
Groundwork,
sorry, Em, when you say this administration, which administration?
the federal one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to I want to clarify that.
Yes, the federal administration.
Okay.
Groundwork USA does not directly provide us with any funding, but because like Groundwork USA is its own 501(c)(3) identity that is like remote, and then there's the affiliates that are place-based. And Groundwork USA functions as like a pass-through, so they go for larger federal or other large private grants, and then create subaward agreements with affiliates. So while Groundwork USA is not handing us dollars, they are the largest source of grants that are coming to us. So we have a couple large grants coming from them, a couple other like regular annual donors that we can rely on. And then the rest is a bit more piecemeal. And
Okay.
again, like becoming federal grants are not for an organization like us, it's really hard to change the language and still tell the same story to fit within the guidelines of federal grants. So we're shying away from those more. And then that means that a lot of other folks like us are being funneled into the same um, privately funded grants. So it's just very, very competitive. But that's part of why like the groundwork network is really powerful because we all together can provide huge deliverables as a network. I just spent last week at a retreat in Yellowstone National Park with other people that do my job of focusing on the youth programs across the groundwork network. And seeing the stats across the whole nation is really incredible. Last year in 2025, across all of the affiliates, we put $1.5 million into the pockets of youth. And that's primarily youth of color, primarily low income youth. Um, so when you put all of those stats together, it's really impressive deliverables. It makes us more competitive as a large network for grants, and then that can be divided up based on the size and capacity of each organization.
Okay. Thank you. And my follow-up, I think, I don't know if you recall, but in the event that this land, this SRA land, owned land in that area becomes I mean, very attractive for development. Um, you talked a little bit about exploring other sites in the city, and I was wondering whether you followed up on that, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the fact is, without a timeline, it's really hard for us to make a plan. If somebody was like, okay, in 3 years, you need to be ready to like move to a new space, then we would be able to use our connections and plan for that. The fact, like, without having any kind of idea as to when this might happen and knowing that we could not maintain the land that we have while also building a new farm site makes it really hard to plan for these kinds of like eventualities. We have worked really hard to create a relationship with the Somerville Community Land Trust, and we have had some initial talks with them about what would it look like to have an urban farm in Somerville be a community land trust. I think, our goal is to create a space that feels a little more permanent, where we feel like really when we invest in this space, it's not just something that like could be taken away. But also our work is very place-based and very intentionally in certain parts of Somerville. You have a lot of requirements for what would make good farmland, and what would be conducive to the kinds of programming that we do. So, we sort of like have created, I think, some of those initial connections and relationships that we would hope to follow up with in order to be able to, like continue this urban agriculture work. But we haven't started any real kind of fundraising campaign because we just have no kind of timeline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also
So
start some
I'm
conversations.
sorry.
Oh, sorry. We did start some conversations like through Tufts and some other local universities. There are a lot of kind of like field study like aspects of like a grad program or something like that. And so we've had conversations about like could like looking for a land or a site for a new farm be a project that we could like partner with a local university on. And again, the issue that we keep running into is just like on what timeline, like is this like a lot of folks want something that can be implemented within a time frame that the people who are working on it can see it, and we don't have answers even to be like check back in X many years. So
And how many square footage are you currently using now?
So the farm itself is about a quarter acre. I don't think I know the exact square footage of the whole area.
Okay. Because I think last year I was pointing you to a site on Cross Street East, which is a 10,000, at least 10,000 square foot site, which was a site of a former church. It was knocked down. It's owned by the city, and it's
Mm,
across from the east Cross Street East playground. And I don't know the condition of the site itself, whether it's something that could be used for that purpose. But it's been sitting there for the longest time. I think the city is now using it to store some of their war memorials, but I don't. That's not going to be a permanent site, and it's in the East Somerville area. So it's just something that would be worth looking at and maybe, enter some discussions with the city about. I'd love to have some kind of organization like yours in that area, and because of the work that you do. Anyway, I'm gonna cut myself short and open it up to any questions, comments from members. I don't see.
I see
Ben
Courtney
Ben
raising
Wheeler.
her hand. Oh, sorry.
Oh, thanks. And I think Courtney was before me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't see everybody. That's my problem. All right, Courtney, I'm
It's okay,
sorry.
Phil. You're picking your favorites. It's totally fine. I won't take it too personally.
Well, he's a counselor. I don't.
Good point.
Well, you are as well. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm manifesting that.
You are
Okay,
as well.
from your mouth to other people's ears. Anyway, couple of questions for you. The first of which is it was really great to hear that you're donating a lot of the things that you're able to plant in like a variety of like there's farmers markets. It seems like you're doing it in collaboration with other organizations as well. One question I had just really in response to like the SNAP crisis and a lot of food insecurity is I'm wondering if community fridges in particular have been on your radar. I know that I live in Union and there's one near me, near Ricky. So I'm wondering to what extent that's one of the areas that you're thinking about giving, like just delivering produce with the caveat that like it might be helpful to give it to a person directly, given how easily they might expire or anything like that. But that is one of two questions. So maybe I'll stop there for the second.
Yeah, for sure. So we definitely give food to the Union Square Community Fridge. Something that we're always mindful of when we're giving food to the community fridge is a lot of the feedback we've gotten has been it's more useful if something is ready to eat. So not all of our produce is like super conducive to the community fridge.
nobody wants a raw zucchini.
Nobody wants, or like a raw eggplant or something, but we've definitely done like washed and bagged lettuce, or we'll do like tomatoes, or like we'll make up like little bags of like even a mixture of produce and stuff, sort of like a cucumber, some tomatoes, and some lettuce or something, like sort of a make your own
Here's a
salad
salad.
kit in a bag. So we do that. We just so like not all of our produce is, I think, appropriate for a community fridge sometimes, but that's definitely also like it's been a long day on the farm. Maybe we had a big harvest. We want to make sure that this food gets somewhere. And like if there hasn't been also like people haven't taken everything or whatever, like we'll hit the community
Or
fridge
like the
on
Somerville Mobile Farmers Market doesn't start running till Thursday, and if we did a harvest on a Monday, that's when we'll go to the Union Square Community Fridge.
Makes a ton of sense, and I think just reflects the thoughtfulness with which you all think about not just like the production of the food, but how it's used and how it's helpful for community members. So I appreciate that. The second question I think is really aimed towards at least just putting on your radar, if it's not already, a couple of possible state and even national funding opportunities. So the first of which is I don't know, and I know this is of your colleague that is not present, how much of your like climate work is focused on heat, or in particular, like the actual planting of trees for the purpose of alleviating heat in certain areas. And the reason why, oh, good. Okay. So then there is a lot of, at least at the Boston Foundation where I work, and also the governor's office, there's been a lot of recent investment in trying to support efforts to help with the actual planting of those trees, but also the data analysis about how they may move the needle on the level of heat, particularly in urban areas. So I wanted to put that on your radar, as well as at least more from, I think, your national affiliate is the Wagner Foundation. They're literally a foundation that is in Cambridge, in particular, is focused on like healthier communities by focusing on health equity, economic well-being, and transformative power. And I feel like if not all of those aligns with the work that you all are doing. So I just wanted to flag that as a neighbor that you might be able to get some meetings with and connect to your national team, just because your intuition about public funding being available is certainly right. But I think there are still some state public and state and national private resources that might still be good opportunities for you all to take advantage of, given the amazing work that you all do. So that's all from me.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Also,
Of
yeah,
course.
taking notes. We've written it down. We'll definitely
Perfect.
follow up.
And please, can you reach out to us about Harvest Fest? Because I think you said it last year, and in my brain, I was like, yes, absolutely, I'll go. And then I totally forgot about it. So to the extent to which you can let us know when that's happening,
It's
please do.
October 3rd, but we'll follow up.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, Ben.
Thanks. First, I want to say I will take those raw zucchini anytime. I just want to appreciate your whole presentation, but in particular, the ways that you talked about investing in our youth and creating a sense of welcome and belonging and a real role to play for so many young people here, where they will be called on to do work to, in turn invest in this land and in this shared resource. I think those kinds of opportunities for building expertise, but also building identity and building um, rootedness and a sense of stewardship of a place and of living things. I think that's really, really special, and I think it's the kind of thing that has resonance far, far beyond just the people involved, but ripples in how their changing sense of their role here and their belonging here affects their lives and the lives of those around them. So I think that's really tremendously meaningful work. Thank you so much for this work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Any other members? I don't see any hands. Courtney, you up again. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I see
that's
your
me. I
hand.
didn't lower the hand.
Okay. All right. All right. If there's no other questions or comments, Katie, do we need to do anything? We don't need to take a vote. This is just a presentation, correct?
Correct.
All right,
Sure.
great. All right, well, good luck, and we'll see you next year. Keep up the good work.
Sounds great. Thank you
Wonderful.
guys so much for having us.
Thank you all.
All right, take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.
Well, were there any members of the public who wanted to comment, Katie?
At the moment, Mr. Chair, we have 4 members of the public in attendance, and if you'd like to make a comment, please use the raise hand function. We'll give it a few moments. I'm seeing no hands raised, Mr. Chair.
All right, Katie, thank you. The next item on the agenda is item number 4, which is Union Square zoning proposal update.
Mr. Chair, I will hand that over to Economic Development Planner Ben Demers to give an update.
All right.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Katie. Through Mr. Chair to the authority, I just wanted to give a quick update since we've spoken about this in the last few meetings, about the zoning proposal that Hamilton Companies has put forward for the D6 or Disposition 6 parcel in the Union Square revitalization plan. So we gave some of the context in the last meeting, but for any zoning change that is being proposed for a parcel, and in this case, they're looking to rezone the parcel from Commercial Core 5 to MR6, which is a zoning designation that would allow for residential development at that corner. And again, just for anyone tuning in, this is the southwest corner of Prospect and Somerville. So this is where, when you think about the parcel that has urban access, Aobi Sushi, that area in Union Square. So they first do a presentation to a joint session of the Land Use Committee and the Land Use Committee of the City Council and the Planning Board. So that occurred on April 16th. Public comment was made at that meeting. Generally, commentary was mixed. There's a recording of that meeting up if anybody is interested to hear more of it. The Land Use Committee then generally will leave items open for a period of time. So they left open the public comment period until May 15th. So just where we are in the process of that rezoning, just still collecting public feedback on the proposal. And then what will happen is that the commentary will go to the planning board. The planning board will discuss, make a recommendation. It will then generally be taken up at the land use committee. The land use committee will then also discuss, make a recommendation to the full council. So it's generally the process that any zoning update might go through. So this is really all to say it's in process right now. There are no major updates. Mostly just wanted to keep this as an item since it's come up in the last few meetings.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Any questions of Ben on this? Seeing none. Katie, again, any members of the public want to address a comment on Union Square zoning?
Seeing none, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is item number 5, which is 90 Washington Street demonstration project plan. And we're going to get a general update.
Through you, Mr. Chair, again, staff, Ben Demers is going to share an update.
Second to set up my screen. So change my view so I can see everyone's face again. Okay. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Perfect. So prior to this evening's meeting, I shared a memo just describing where we are in the process of reviewing responses to the 90 Washington Street Request for Proposals, or RFP. So I'm going to give essentially a presentation version of that memo now. Also can answer any general questions from members at the time. We're then going to request that we move into executive session to specifically discuss the financial portion of the responses. Just want to note there are no decisions that we are asking the Redevelopment Authority to make this evening. We're just making sure that we're using our usual SRE meeting time to provide updates as we go. Okay, so hopping into things, the Redevelopment Authority received 2 responses to the request for proposals to the RFP to redevelop 90 Washington Street. So those 2 proposals are from Wood Partners and then North River Lyric Manager LLC. So I will refer to them as Wood Partners or WP, and then North River Lyric, so NRL, throughout the evening. As a reminder, each of these proposals contain 2 parts. So there is the technical proposal that includes really the qualitative elements, so things like the site program, the approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion within the development process. And then it also includes the financial component. So this includes the financial offer for the land and the timing and anything associated with the financial strength of the organizations. And then also just as a reminder, so it's kind of top of mind, the main objectives that we captured in the RFP were first, recouping a significant portion of the funds paid for 90 Washington Street. Second, creating a combination of new housing, new commercial space, particularly ground floor retail, new community space, and also green space. And then also we got into a little bit more detail on the different development principles that we would look for a team to follow. So this is thinking about mixed-use building formats, so thinking about residential over ground floor retail especially. Also really looking for dense development and opening up some potential zoning pathways for that dense development. And then also the creation of a robust urban tree canopy and natural landscape. So those are just some of the different principles that were included in the RFP. Process for reviewing the responses to the RFP involves review by a number of different groups. So you can see here kind of the breakdown of the review schedule. And I apologize, in putting this into PowerPoint, it was difficult to show what the color code responds to. Green here is referring to an internal city process. Red is the Civic Advisory Committee, or orange is Civic Advisory Committee. The kind of pinkish purple is the City Council, and then the blue is the Redevelopment Authority. So the way that this review process is going, after we received proposals on April 10th, HRNA did an initial review for completeness of the proposals and also did an initial scoring. And they have since updated that and have a final scoring of the technical proposal specifically, so of the qualitative elements of the proposal that we shared for this meeting and is also shared on the project website. I don't have it in this list. City staff have also done a review of the proposals, really looking for anything that really stands out as not in line with city standards. So that has also been included in the memo that was shared for this evening. And then after HRNA completed their initial review, we had a series of meetings with the 90 Washington Street Civic Advisory Committee. Councilor Wheeler has sat in on some long meetings the last couple of weeks where we're hearing feedback from the Civic Advisory Committee about to get their initial response to the proposals. They then also interviewed each of the respondent teams on April 28th. And then they came together yesterday evening to kind of debrief those interviews and put together a final memo that really captures their feedback on the process. So we shared that today, now that it's complete, and we'll also be sharing it with the city council for next week. So now that we have feedback from HRNA, city staff, and the Civic Advisory Committee on the technical element, the technical component of the proposal, the next step is that things will go to the city council on Monday. So they have a special session this coming Monday to both hear all of that feedback and provide their own feedback on the technical component. And then also they will be meeting in executive session to hear and discuss the financial component of the offers. So the financial component is only being made available to the city council and then to the redevelopment authority. And so the idea is that the city council is narrowing things down to 2 proposals. In this case, there only are 2 proposals, and that those are the ones that will go forward into the best and final offer period. So once those move forward, we then have another meeting set up on May 19th, which we talked about last time. So we have that touch point after the council meeting prior to the start of the best and final offer period. And we'll then be doing what is called a best and final offer period. So a period in which we are asking the respondents to update their proposals based on the feedback that we have received thus far. And we will expect to go through that in the latter portion of May and then through the month of June. And then we will come back together at the end of June, beginning of July to look at those updated proposals. And I will note that at last night's meeting of the Civic Advisory Committee, we talked about having an additional touch point for the Civic Advisory Committee once we received updated proposals from each of the respondent teams, just to give some of the feedback if we expect large changes in the development program. So that is not yet on the schedule. We need to follow up scheduling that, but that'll be likely the very beginning of July. And so we might push back the SRA review slightly into July, but it's still going to be around that time frame that we laid out for the respondents. So you can see here kind of where we are in the process. We're about halfway through. And we're moving next into the council session. So I'm going to walk through each of the proposals. Has everyone had a chance to look at the proposals? Great. Okay. So I'm going to do this somewhat quickly. The first proposal that we received, like I mentioned, is from Wood Partners. They are the lead on the project, and then they've listed PCA as their architect. The program that they propose is one building of around seven stories. And this comprises 324 residential units. 20% of these would be set aside as income restricted. And then they have about 15,000 square feet set aside for retail space along the ground floor on Washington Street, as well as a little under 15,000 square feet for amenity space. So you can see here the red. They then also identify about a little under 6,000 square feet for community space. You can see that here in blue on their site plan. And then they also include a parking structure in the center of the site, which is 398 spaces. So this is a structured parking around which the residential is based. A couple of other highlights, you can see here that they include an access drive along the eastern portion of the site, which provides access to the parking structure, but also maintains access to the western portion of Cobble Hills Building 84. And then you can also see here on the corner of Washington and New Washington Street, they propose about a 7,000 square foot civic space. And then they also, it's not shown in this graphic, but they propose essentially returning what we call the tail portion. So everything east of the access drive here back to the city at the end of construction.
And
So you can
may I
s-
interrupt you here for a second? Christine Stone is asking whether it would be appropriate to ask any questions during your presentation, or do you want us to hold those comments or questions until the end?
um, just to preview the flow. So I'm going to show each presentation and then I'm going to talk through the feedback from the Civic Advisory Committee, city staff, and HRNA for each proposal. I'm happy to stop as we go though and answer questions, but that's kind of just where we're headed.
Okay.
So you can see these graphics a little more clearly. You can see kind of the way that they recess back from Washington Street and the parking structure in the center. The second response was from North River Lyric. So they are the lead in this case, and they're working with Handel as their architect and Scape as their landscape architect. I will note in their initial proposal that was shared with SRA members, did not have these visual graphics, and these were added for their presentation that they did during their interview on April 28th. So a little bit more graphic detail. So the project that they propose is 3 buildings that are laid out around the site here. And the shortest being 6 stories, the tallest being 16. The use here again is residential with ground floor, retail, and art space. I'll just present this slide, Christine, and then respond to your question. So the total units across this is 426. Initially, they had mentioned 600 in the initial proposal, but they brought that down as they kind of refined the site plan. Again, 20% of these would be income restricted, so that's about 86. They also propose about 17,000 square feet of retail space along Washington Street, but also fronting the inner courtyard in their proposal. They also propose an art center of about 8,000 square feet in one of their buildings. And then they propose including 200 parking spaces below ground. So again, I just noted one of the highlights in their proposal being this central green space between the buildings, as well as the art center that they propose in one of the buildings. Christine, is it helpful if I answer the question now?
Sure, yeah. So, did they talk at all about how this underground, obviously we cannot see the underground parking in the rendering or in the site plan. Did they discuss whether they thought about how that parking would get accessed and where it would be located? Like, is it under that park or is it under the buildings? Have they thought about that at all?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Stone. I'm not as crisp on this and I see Councilor Wheeler raising his hand. Do you remember the detail of this, Councilor Wheeler?
Yeah, the entrance and exit are along New Washington. And so I think they're essentially under that building that in the left render. It's that shorter building that's all the way to the left.
Yeah.
And you can see in the image on the right, uh, so at the tip, the corner where that's yellow, if you go down New Washington from there to sort of where it says loading, I think that area is an entrance and exit for the cars. I'm not exactly sure the size and shape of the underground garage area, but that was approximately where they had the entrance and exit.
Okay, thank you.
I will note in their initial proposal, when they gave the breakdown of the different buildings and how many units would be included, I believe they had referenced the parking under the tallest structure. So this is probably something that's worth asking for detail from their team.
And just real quick, if you see the little triangles on by New Washington Street, those are the ramps in and out. Right there is one, and then down. Yep, right there.
Okay. All right. So they thought about it because I know it would seem easy to put it kind of under the park, but actually that I know structurally is really difficult. So at least they thought about it and put it under one of their buildings. So thank you.
So this is just a comparison of the 2 programs. So again, noticing the difference in the number of buildings, the number of units, the amount of retail and commercial space, as well as parking. And then you can see here side by side the site plans. So I want to take some time to dive into what we have been hearing in the review of the technical components of these proposals. And those are from the three groups that I mentioned earlier. So the Civic Advisory Committee, city staff, and the real estate consultant for the project, HR&A. For each of these reviews, because these groups are discussing the technical proposals only without knowing the financial components of the proposals, we've been encouraging folks to really frame their feedback as what can be improved about these two proposals so that when we enter the best and final offer period, we really understand what people would want to see changed. And I'm just going to pull a few excerpts from what we have been discussing. I definitely would encourage going into the full document, especially from the Civic Advisory Committee. So the memo that I shared today, that is a several page table that really lays out based on different categories, what kinds of improvements would the group want to see to the proposal. So in terms of the Wood Partners proposal, looking at CAC feedback, the highlights from this team, so a few members mentioned they appreciate the access drive that the team proposed along the eastern edge of the site and the experience of the development team in Somerville. But in terms of areas of improvement, definitely many members expressed concern with how large the single building felt on the site. And even with it being so large on the site, they still wanted to see greater density. So they didn't feel like the large footprint of the building was actually achieving the level of density that they wanted to see. And I will say, Councilor Wheeler, please at any point unmute and jump in. Obviously, we're there for all these conversations. One of the other main things that CSC members latched onto was the high amount of parking on the site. So 398 spaces for 324 residential units and only about 15,000 square feet of commercial. And this is especially given the adjacency to the MBTA station. They spoke to this a little bit in their interview presentation, the development team. So they talked a bit about how it's essentially a precast garage. But this was something that the Civic Advisory Committee members and members of the public who attended CAC meetings really came back to. CAC members also noted that the proposal doesn't include significant new green space. The 7,000 square feet at the intersection of Washington and New Washington isn't really sufficient for gathering. And they were concerned about the amount of space given to private amenities. And then several CAC members also noted a lack of detail in the development team's retail strategy. So really wanted to hear kind of more detail on how local businesses, small businesses were going to be engaged and given space in the new building. Councilor Wheeler, before I move into kind of staff commentary, is there anything you'd want to add on that?
No, I think that's fair. Just to give a tiny bit more context for the amount of space given to private amenities, there were a couple comments, including from me, about, along New Washington, there's this area, and you can see a little pool rendering there. There was that in some ways. It wasn't only that, but there was a sense from some people that there was sort of a private amenities focus with public amenities kind of in some ways as an afterthought rather than being part of the core design from the beginning.
Yeah, and I'll just add here, so they do also show along Washington Street these two raised kind of courtyards, but again, they're raised from the ground level. So not exactly clear on whether they would be publicly accessible, but definitely, even if they were, the question of whether they would feel publicly accessible. Okay, so moving into some of the comments that staff had. Staff review for this proposal in particular really, I think, mirrored the comments that were made by CSC members. So a very high number of parking spaces, given the proximity to the MBTA station, doesn't create significant new open space. So looking for them to create additional civic space, and to the point about amenity spaces that Councilor Wheeler just mentioned, also thinking about how they might consolidate some of those private amenity spaces on top of the parking garage in the center of the site and make better use of that center, or make better use of the roof of that garage space. And then I showed a bit the way that the facade looks broken up, and so it has those kind of courtyard spaces along Washington Street that are a few floors up. So the development team spoke to this in their interview, and they mentioned there was a desire to do that to break up the facade of the building and make it feel like multiple buildings. This is something we often hear about in an urban design context. I think there's questions that staff have around whether that's better achieved by something like a change in building materials, and just some questions here about whether the current design achieves the greatest efficiency on the site, so fits the most number of units, or if having kind of a more solid wall along Washington Street would be both better urban design and potentially fit more units on the site. So just something that staff have flagged. And in terms of notes from HRNA, again, concerns around high volume of parking, lack of detail in the ground floor activation, and not a ton of detail given to their tenanting strategy for the different commercial spaces, although they do talk about a few comparisons in the area during their interview. Some concern with the massing adjacent to Cobble Hill, and then again, expecting greater density than what is proposed. Shifting over to the North River Lyric side. So in terms of CSC feedback, most CSC members expressed appreciation for the greater density in this proposal and the fact that this was delivered across multiple buildings. Again, there was some disappointment that it shifted down from 600 to 426 during the interview, but again, still a higher number of residential units that they're fitting on the site here. And they're kind of doing it in that tiered way from the intersection of Washington and New Washington down to the border with Cobble Hill. They also appreciated the central green space. And I will say, in general, CSC members strongly preferred this proposal based on the technical proposal. There definitely is, an excitement to see how teams respond, but based on the current proposals, that was something that was clearly expressed. And then in terms of areas for improvement, so several CSC members, like I mentioned, they were disappointed by the drop in the number of units. They would still hope to see greater density on the site. CSC members also had concerns that the central green space would feel privatized. So even though it is a large green space, there's some concern that it doesn't feel sufficiently accessible from Washington or New Washington Street. So it would just end up serving as a courtyard for the buildings rather than really a gathering space for the neighborhood. And then there were some ideas around how kind of bringing people into that space could be encouraged. And then also several CSC members wanted to better understand their ground floor activation strategy. There was some discussion initially of kind of large grocery chains, but they have mentioned including a grocery store, but they also showed an openness in their interview to kind of thinking more about that with the neighborhood. Councilor Wheeler, anything else you want to add on this one?
Thanks. I reread Bill Valletta, who's on the CAC and is an attendee tonight. I reread Bill's comments and thoughts about the privatized space. I thought he really made some good points that there's some things that I appreciated and some other people appreciated about the efforts by North River Lyric to create lines of sight from the street into this inner green area and to make a sort of archway with the intention of inviting people in. Bill was making some good points that there are spaces like that that are private, but that are formally available to the public around the city, including right nearby at Cobble Hill, that really are incredibly rarely used by people who don't live there or are visiting somebody who lives there. And I just think that's a good point for us to maybe bring back to them and wonder about, are there ways to maybe shift some of that green space so that it's alongside the sidewalk or the street, so that and maybe provide other kinds of ways to signal that this is a place that anybody can go.
In terms of staff feedback around this proposal, so again, similar to what we just discussed, some concern around the central green space, not reading as accessible to the public. So some ideas for how you would welcome people in. So either widening the entrances between the buildings, or also thinking about signage and things like that to pull people into the space. One thing that came up in staff review with our housing team, and so the proposal for the income restricted units for this project is to concentrate the income restricted units in one of the three buildings and use low income housing tax credits. So LIHTC funding, this is the most common way of funding affordable housing or income restricted housing development in the United States. It's to use LIHTC funding to fund the development of the income restricted units. And so this is a bit different. Generally, the inclusionary zoning policy in Somerville requires that in new multifamily housing, 20% of the units are set aside at income restricted rates based on area median income. And the idea is that that is cross-subsidized across by the market rate units in the project, and also that they are located throughout the project. They also use different income levels. So our inclusionary zoning sets aside the income restricted units at 50, 80, and 110% of area median income. So it's a very specific ratio. Whereas the way that LIHTC works, generally the projects that are the units that are receiving subsidy in the project need to average 60% area median income. So it's different ways of setting the income level for the unit. So there's some concern that they would look to use LIHTC units to fulfill the inclusionary zoning requirement. And also just some concern with the use of outside funding to fund the development of units that are meant to be cross-subsidized, given that LIHTC is itself a finite funding source. And then related to this, there's a desire to see those units be spread throughout the buildings. So the feedback from our housing team in particular was really looking to see how these income restricted units could be brought throughout the project and rely on cross-subsidy. Member Stone? You were muted.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So Ben, can you just go through that again? And particular, compare the LIHTC income limits to the Somerville's inclusionary zoning. I understand
Sure.
Somerville zoning is 50, 80, 110. But what would be interesting to understand is, does the city then determine the ratio of 50, 80, 110 project to project? Or is it average out so that it's, if it's 20% affordable, let's call it 777, or 6.8, 6.8, 6.8. And then how does whatever that answer is, how does that compare to the LIHTC and the income restricted rules for those LIHTC units? And that's one question. And two, the way I understood it, I think, is if you take the project, the North River proposed project as a whole, they're saying, yes, we will provide 20% affordable, similar to the inclusionary zoning policy, but we're putting it all in one building. And in order to finance that building, we are going, because we would like to use LIHTC to help fund the overall project, and that is a means in which to do that, because you can't spread them equally across the project. So that it would be 20% affordable, 20/80 in that building, and then 100 and 100 in I guess the two other buildings for North River. 100% market, 100% market.
Through Mr. Chair to Member Stone, I might need clarification on the second question, but let me answer the first one first. So I don't know the exact ratio for the 50, 80, 110. The way that it works is that there is a ratio, like an equation used. So essentially, if you built 5 units, let's say, you would have 1, 2, 3, 4 market rate, and then the 5th unit is set aside at a particular area AMI level. And so there is like a pattern or an equation used to do that set aside. If you compare that, the average across those the average AMI level across those income restricted units would likely be higher than if LIHTC funding was used. So a project that uses LIHTC funding, if it has to average out at 60% or lower AMI, that is likely going to be a deeper level of affordability if you use LIHTC funding.
Okay.
So the concern that is expressed, I think, comes less from the level of affordability that you are achieving, more from the kind of implementation and programmatic concerns that are introduced by using one program for creating income restricted housing to fulfill another.
I'm sorry, that's the part I don't understand.
So currently it is required by, I can also see Rachel probably has some comments on this, but currently the way that it is structured is that it is required in zoning to do a set aside of income restricted units and that those be fulfilled throughout the project. So there are zoning concerns, with if you're going to do that all in one building, how, like, you would not be meeting the requirement of the IZ policy in zoning. So that is where
Yeah.
one concern comes from. The other being, if you're using LIHTC funding, LIHTC is a finite resource. There's generally only so many projects within Somerville in a year or within a several year period that are receiving LIHTC funding. So if your hope is that LIHTC is going towards projects that wouldn't be built otherwise, and then inclusionary zoning units are being created in a project that are cross-subsidized by the market rate, are you taking away that LIHTC funding from another project? And that's a larger question, but that's kind of where the thought process goes.
Okay, thank you.
I
Yeah.
think too, Ben, I could be wrong about this, but having grown up in that world, I think in order for this to be competitive in the low income housing tax credit funding rounds, I think the state is also going to probably be looking at the city to provide other sources of funds to co-join with this tax credit. So I'd be surprised if they didn't request it. So again, Somerville, the city is going to be asked to pony up some kind of funding stream, and how that funding is used as it relates to these restricted units is the next question.
I would only say this is this to me is is a bird of another feather from the Broadway project, right? The Star Market project on
Right.
Broadway.
I was thinking.
And that one building is LIHTC, the other is a market rate or market with some affordable, but at a lower percentage than the minimum required by the inclusionary zoning policy.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Stone, that's correct. And in order to do that, they've had to go through a special permitting pathway. So it's the 40B permitting that has enabled that project to do that.
Okay.
Oh,
I'll have more
sorry.
to say in the executive when I see the price, when we talk about economics, I will have more comments on this at that time.
All right, I see Councilor Willis hand up, and I know Member Gage also had a comment.
Thanks. I feel like I have like a third of a comment on a couple different things, so I'll try to be brief and not just repeat. To go back to Member Stone's question about the inclusionary zoning cycle and your answer, Ben. There, like you were saying, there is a sort of a rhythm, a cycle, so that as sort of the number of total units goes up, you start, hitting the requirement for, as you said, one and then two and then three and then four of these subsidized affordable units, and there's a cycle to how those units are defined. So the very first one is defined as it's called tier one in the zoning code. It's basically the 50% of AMI level. There's a link someone, I guess Katie is putting in the chat here. So it's a little complicated, but it's this repeating cycle. So basically it's 50% and then 80% and then 50% again, 80% again, and then the fifth one is 110% of AMI level, and then essentially that rhythm repeats basically. So, and that's sort of designed so that there isn't some sort of stopping point that's advantageous to the developer to, as it keeps growing, the total amount of subsidy is roughly even. And when there are fractions, this isn't as much of an issue with a big building, but when there are fractions, it's possible for a developer to pay a small amount of money to sort of absorb that fraction. I was also curious about the LIHTC relationship, and I really appreciate the question and answer there about, at first blush, I was thinking, hey, all the more sort of incentives and money we can get coming in for low-income housing credits, the better. But I'm hearing your point, Ben, that there's a finite amount of this. And if these credits are used for this building and then not available to some other project, along the lines of 299 Broadway or something that would be really more of a large investment in affordable housing. We're sort of using it up on something that really should be covered by the inclusionary zoning policy, if I'm understanding that right.
Yeah, exactly.
Patrick?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for those comments. I was wondering if anything has come up regarding lumping together the affordable units in a single building. I think my own preference is not to do that. This has come up in other projects, and from what I've read and what I've seen, it's just generally better to have that those populations as mixed as possible. So I didn't know if that came up in any of the review that putting a single building where many of those affordable units are in this case is not optimal.
Through the chair to Member McCormick. So the final bullet on the bottom here is specifically around that point. So the preference of the city is that, again, the way that the inclusionary zoning policy is designed is to spread those income restricted units throughout the entire project. So it's definitely not the preference of the city to see them consolidated on one site. This was also brought up by a civic advisory committee member.
Yeah, thank you.
I do see Member Stone's hand. I just want to make sure. Member Gage, did you try to make a comment earlier?
I did, but I think I'm all set because Christine brought up with the Winter Hill project, and I was just going to ask about comparing the two. So I'm fine now.
Member Stone?
Yes, and just I guess in response to Patrick's question, I think one of the big differences between the two proposals is just this, is that I believe the Wood Partners proposal addresses affordability via Somerville's inclusionary zoning, where the units are spread throughout, it'll be a process, I imagine, but they're spread throughout the project. Whereas this proposal from North River specifically puts all the inclusionary housing or all the affordable housing in one building, and it's the low rise in the back of the project for the project. So it's 20%. I think what I understand is it's 20% of the total units, but they are all which is 20% of what 460 is. 426 is
86.
485 units, 86 units, and they are all located in that back building.
Through the chair to Member Stone, yes, I apologize. Now remembering your question earlier. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. And that is not aligned with Somerville's policy, but it is, I suspect, aligned with how you get LIHTC.
Rachel.
Yeah, this was definitely a big theme and debate for sure during the 299 Broadway project development. That to use LIHTC funding, a project does need to be 100% affordable. And with how we got there on 299 was a circuitous series of events. But what we ultimately where it landed is one building is 100% affordable and the other building is 10%. And that was where the state felt comfortable, and where the city and the community ended up feeling comfortable as well.
And may I just ask Rachel a question on that?
Of course.
So when you take the overall 299 Broadway project and total units, disregarding location of unit in building A or building B, what is the total affordability in that overall project?
I'm gonna have Ben answer that because he knows this detail.
Yeah, so the total affordability, 136 out of 319 units are income restricted. So that is 43% are income restricted. Part of this, though, is also that more of the income restricted units are larger, so 2 and 3 bedroom units that are in the fully income restricted building, so the Beacon Communities building. So there's a lower unit count on that building, and it is a little bit smaller overall, but there are more large units within the building. So it's a closer to a 50-50 ratio in terms of the floor area across the residential units between income restricted and market rate.
Courtney?
Thank you all for being really helpful in laying this all out, especially since my expertise is not the affordable housing development and the capital stacks associated with making it affordable. But I also wanted to add to what extent I think one of the areas of feedback from the CIC would the addition of homeownership units further complicate this. I just wanted to uplift that as something that the CAC provided feedback on. My intuition is that that's a no-go, but I just wanted to confirm whether or not that aligns with just the financing that's required.
Through the chair to Member Brunson, just to make sure I understand, is the question specifically, can the LIHTC funding be used to fund homeownership opportunities, like income restricted homeownership opportunities?
No, more like this project generally, even for market rate housing, the non-subsidized options, if this is even a possible opportunity for homeownership units.
May I answer?
Please.
Courtney, I think you usually do not see home ownership mixed with multifamily.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So, you might see it. I mean, because then you introduce the need for a condominium structure, which puts a whole other level of complexity onto the project from a financing perspective. So you have a lender that's going to lend to a condominium, and that are a developer that at the end of the day is going to own 95% of the overall units, and then there's 5% that are owned by 10 other people. It just gets super complicated.
And we're
So
not even getting into the deed restrictions if we wanted to like preserve their affordability long term.
exactly.
Okay.
Sometimes you see a project where it's like there's the where the Whole Foods is in the South End. So that project, in that master project, there is one building that's home ownership and then several buildings that are multifamily. And so you might see it vertically separated, right? But that is not what is being proposed here. And right now, condominium development is just really, you're not seeing a lot of like large scale condominium projects coming out of the ground because it's just hard to finance.
I didn't know if I could let Councilor Wheeler speak or if I had to do.
Councilor Wheeler, is your comment in response to, I think either way, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that homeownership did come up in the CAC. One of the members made some good points about, that if it were possible, that it's something that could help people lay down roots and there be more of a building sense of long-term commitment to living there. So just thought I'd highlight that.
Thank you. Member Stump?
So one thing that I noted in the responses, again, kind of comparing and contrasting, is that Wood Partners is being maybe their room for improvement is that they don't have enough green space. But I think part of that criticism or need for improvement is based on the fact that they're giving back the, what do you call it, the tail section to the city for some other use. Whereas this North Link proposal keeps that tail piece, and that is where a preponderance of their open space is. But in a scenario where that piece is given back to the city, I wonder if that portion of the site can then be deeded to another developer, a CDC, who can build home ownership, like call it townhomes, kind of along that new Washington, and whether or not that is the location for home ownership. And I think the reason why both developers did not did not plan for improvement on that site is it's just a weird shape and it gets very narrow and you cannot put down a multifamily building there. And so that's kind of food for thought for all of us is, you know, is that an opportunity for home ownership units, that location, that portion of the site?
So, thank you.
Rachel?
Rachel, is your comment in?
Yeah, so just thinking about this is also a little bit of the story of 299 Broadway as well. 299 Broadway has those little pieces that stick to the back, and one of those lots is a partnership that we've been working very closely with. The last little piece is like it's a triple decker lot, right? And so it's going to be a project with the land trust. Goodness, my words are coming back. So that will probably be a homeownership opportunity. And it's the same kind of thing where it's that little piece. It's much more of the right scale for a homeownership project developer.
Thank you, Rachel.
Any other comment? Ben, are you done, Ben?
To the
Not
chair,
right.
just one more slide before the request for executive session.
Okay.
So in terms of feedback from HRNA, so for this proposal, so something that we discussed a bit is that, with the inclusion of underground parking here, the way that the process will work is that once the development team is selected, we'll enter an exclusive negotiating period with their team for several months leading up to the execution of a land development agreement. And that is also the period in which they're meant to be doing their due diligence. So there was a note from HRNA that, the inclusion here of underground parking is predicated on the ability to do that parking, which is going to be related to the due diligence work. And so largely they made this comment because, at this RFP phase, obviously we're responding to these concept plans that will change and iterate over time. But especially with the central green space and the number of units being part of what people have been really attracted to with these projects, HRNA just wanted to call out that there is some concern that if there were issues found with the soil during the due diligence period, that might lead the development team to need to do structured parking, and that's going to change the site plan. So they wanted to call that out. And then one other piece is that, adding on to the LIHTC conversation, this does introduce kind of additional procedural. So this is a, state process that has an annual calendar for applying. So if the project is waiting on LIHTC funding, that can introduce some potential concerns. And then I'm just showing quickly HRNA's score again. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Just showing the score that they gave based on the categories that we had in the RFP. So they awarded a score of 37 to Wood Partners' proposal. Pretty similar between the two teams on the strength of their proposals in terms of how they align with city objectives, but scored higher here based on kind of the clarity of their zoning pathway and the feasibility of that entitlement strategy, and then also their comparable success with other projects. So Wood Partners pointed a lot to other similar scale residential projects, whereas North River had a bit less experience in the residential space, so building specifically what they are proposing here. But you can definitely get more into the HRNA memos for that scoring. So next up, after this, I know we're going to ask to go into executive session in a moment, but just want to take a moment. This has been a general update. The next step is that we're going to be going to the city council, like I mentioned, on Monday, and we'll give them a similar presentation that summarizes the feedback. And then there will also be an executive session to discuss the financial components. And the goal is to come out of that meeting with an endorsement of the Civic Advisory Committee's recommendation, essentially. So saying these are the two teams that move forward into the best and final offer period. So I just want to call that out. Are there any other, I guess, we just spent a long time talking about particular elements of the feedback. We still have conversation to have in executive session, so I want to be respectful of time, but are there any other questions at this moment? Okay.
Ben, before we conclude this portion of it, I'd like to open it up to questions from the public if they would like to address us.
For you, Mr. Chair, we do have members of the public in attendance, and as a reminder, if anyone joined recently, please use the raise hand function and I will call on you to speak. You will have 2 minutes to speak. So we'll give some moments for any members of the public. Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any members raising their hand.
Okay. All right, Ben, so you've concluded your presentation?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to enter into an executive session to discuss the value of the real property at 90 Washington Street.
Should I do what Phil said?
Christine?
No, I motion to go into
Okay, and Courtney, I think you seconded that motion, correct? Okay, so
Yeah.
we'll do a roll call vote. Courtney Brunson,
Yes.
William Gage,
Yes.
Patrick McCormick,
Yes.
Christine Stone,
yes.
Ben Wheeler,
Yes.
and myself, Phil Ercolini, have voted to move into executive session. We will be opening in public session at the conclusion of executive session. Okay, we'll see you in a bit.
Oh, folks, if there's people still there, I was struggling to find the link for Teams.
Counselor Wheeler, I can share that with you.
Thank you.
Welcome. And then for any members of the public, the only other item on the agenda once we return to the general session will be a motion to adjourn. So we will now move over to the executive session. And then Counselor Wheeler, would it work if I email it to you? Do you have access?
Thank you. I see it in that
Awesome.
email. So thank you.
Okay.
Is everyone here?
Not quite. One moment, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
While we wait, Patrick, I thought it was really helpful to note that your lighting gives like a very successful and menacing villain in a film.
Thank
And
you,
say
Courtney.
that with all positive intention.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He's the eminence grise behind the authority.
Mr. Chair, we're having some technical difficulties, but I think we do have a quorum and we are able to vote to adjourn.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Courtney Brunson makes a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Ben Wheeler seconds. Roll call vote. Courtney Brunson,
Yes.
Lynn Gage, Patrick McCormick,
Yes.
Christine Stone, Ben Wheeler,
Yes.
myself, Phil Urcolini, have voted to adjourn. So we'll see each other pretty soon, I guess, right?
Yep.
Thanks, y'all.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Everyone.
Bye.